Hello, welcome to the tech session here. Today, Matt Baran, who is a senior channel systems engineer with Nutanix, who I've worked with for years, we're going to talk about the latest trends in IT, particularly around AI, and what you can do to quickly get involved with developing AI in your organization. AI, of course, top of mind for everybody. It's something that, every organization is looking at right now. But if you look into it, Gartner's saying that up to 50% of AI projects are, failing right now. And so, Matt and I got to talking recently over, what can organizations do to make this, transition easier and have less risk? And so with that, it's something that we feel like there could be a great discussion around this, and I think Matt's a great person for us to dive into this with.
Yeah, Art, really appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak on behalf of Nutanix, especially with one of our trusted partners, E360. So really happy to be here. Definitely happy to come talk about, Gen AI and GPT.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And the thing behind AI, like we've been talking about for 10 years, that IT is changing faster and faster all the time. But in my 25-year career, I mean, as much as cliche as we say that, it's changing like never before. There's new things coming out all the time with AI. And we are at such the beginning of this whole revolution, even though it's been around for a year now. I think a lot of organizations are struggling not only where to start, but how do we start this without painting ourselves into a corner where a year from now we're really kicking ourselves? I personally have had vendors tell me, well, we have a $16 million solution, and it's okay if it doesn't work out because the customer can then just tear it apart and use it for something else. I mean, what's been your experience, Matt?
Yeah, my experience has been that organizations are really interested in jumping into Gen AI, but they don't have those resources or that time commitment to do so, right? So traditionally speaking, with something like a Gen AI, you had a few options, right? At the sort of nexus of it, you could build it yourself, right? It's mostly open source components. It can be built on pretty traditional hardware. But that takes a really high level of expertise and speciality to be able to do that, right? You have platform engineering, there's DevOps, there's Kubernetes, there's a lot of moving pieces. The other option was the cloud, right? Where Gen AI was born. And that's super easy. The challenge there is that it can be costly, but also you have this concern for organizations about data sovereignty, right? You're now taking that data that is yours, your very protected data, and perhaps pushing it out to the cloud where you lose control over that data. So those have been some of the challenges that I've seen.
Yeah, and when we talk cloud and options there, you know, are customers talking with you about where it's best to use the cloud and where it's best to use it on-prem? And you know the elephant in the room is these are probably seven-figure solutions for a lot of this. And again, circling back to risk, what are you talking to customers about and getting into this without having to make a gigantic long-term commitment, or where to start?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, right? I have a lot of conversations with customers about this, and it's what are they excited about, right? What's bringing them to this, right? And it can be a lot of different things. Just from the first time novelness of jumping into Chat GPT and asking it a question and getting an answer that seems like a human wrote it, um, really hooks your attention, right? And so then the wheels start to turn, and it's what can I do with this that might make my business better? And so you start to then look at, well, let's say I'm a small, law firm, and I have thousands of case documents that are specific to my industry, or the area in which I practice law. That today, to go through that documentation, let's say I'm preparing a new case and I want to reference all that old data, that I have a library, and I have employees who go out into the library and they're looking for data, previous cases, pulling information, snippets. What if I could take all that data and I could augment a Gen AI model, a GPT, and ask it a question about a previous case or previous piece of law, and have that answer delivered to me with the context in which it was found, And then that might speed up my time to business, my ability to move more quickly. And I think that's the case everywhere, right? We create data right now at a rate that has never been faster. And every day we break that record by creating more and more data in the world. So what could we do to then start to harness that data? And it's not just about being able to search it or index it, but it's how can I have a human-like conversation with that data and get that answer back out?
Yeah, and one thing that just crossed my mind with you mentioning law is, on top of the change, with this greater access to our data through indexing and the interface, it immediately, especially with the law firm, how do we keep the wrong people from looking at the wrong
Mhm.
things, accessing the wrong cases?
Yep.
Uh, you could have a bad actor inside a firm who's stealing stuff for another firm, or, just having a personal interest in a case and things like.
Sure. Yeah. And that's where it becomes really important with Gen AI, right? When you hook something like a Gen AI into your organization, think of a Microsoft Copilot. What we've seen is that it immediately grabs its hooks into every piece of data that you have. And what we've seen there is it becomes really trivial for an employee to log into Copilot, for example, and type in a query and say, show me people that got bonuses last year, right? And someone somewhere had that document saved in their drive with incorrect permissions, and it was able to index that. So definitely one of the things that Nutanix is really focused on beyond simplifying the adoption of these Gen AI platforms is data security, data sovereignty, right? We want to protect the AI from leakage of data or poisoning of data. And we really want to make sure that the data that you're providing it remains on premises, right? That's a big deal where, at ChatGPT, if you, depending on the tier that you're using, they make it very clear that the data that you feed into it gets added to the model and becomes data then for other people. So as an organization, you have to ensure that your data does not get mixed into the general pool of data that's being leveraged.
Wow, so that really sounds like a great reason to, think about the cloud and, what you would do with a Nutanix, in comparison to, be able to have greater access and control of your data. When we look at all these things, and we've talked about a lot of components here, we've mentioned LLMs, there's obviously storage involved, there's compute, there's GPUs, you know, it's, and of course you can do those things in the cloud. What, how are you seeing customers approach the complexity of this?
Well, I think the way that we'd like to see customers approach the complexity of this is to look at a platform like Nutanix's GPT in a box. So what Nutanix has done with GPT in a box, and more specifically GPT in a box 2.0, which I think you saw announced at our annual event .next in Barcelona, is we've basically taken our industry standard, our Nutanix cloud platform, and our Nutanix unified storage, which are pre-existing products, and those already have leverages into Kubernetes, which is the foundation for these Gen AI solutions. We already had all of that. So what was the next logical solution? Well, we went out and we partnered with NVIDIA and we partnered with Hugging Face. So NVIDIA is providing what they call NIM, which is their pre-built stack of tooling to build Gen AI on premises or wherever you're building it. And then Hugging Face is what provides those large language models that you're able to then augment with your own data. So basically, what we've put together at Nutanix in our GPT in a box 2.0 is really a turnkey GPT solution that is quick to build, easy to support, very low TCO. And the benefit of a lot of these things is, Nutanix was built around the idea of scaling, web scale technology, right? Start small, scale out. You mentioned earlier in the call, right? There are some of these GPT solutions or AI solutions you can deploy, within your own confines that are 7, 8 figure, 9 figure solutions. The beauty of Nutanix in this space is we scale the same way we scale for any other workload, right? We're workload agnostic. Start with a 3 node cluster and see how it goes. And as that GPT or Gen AI model picks up in popularity and becomes more ingrained in what you're doing as a business, scale, add another node, add a couple of nodes. But that's the beauty of reducing the over provisioning and initial waste of buying a solution that is just too large for getting started.
Wow. And yeah, that sounds like a great plan. You know, when we talk about Nutanix, of course, Nutanix is a software only solution. They're definitely famous for that. So who's Nutanix, partnering with? What does the GPT in a box look like when we talk about, the underlying hypervisor and, hardware components? I know you've mentioned NVIDIA.
Yep.
Who else are you working with?
Yeah, so absolutely. So obviously NVIDIA being the big one there, right? They're the 10,000 pound elephant in the room right now. They're sort of running the show. That may change, right? There are other players in the space that may come and introduce a solution that can compete. But for now, it's definitely NVIDIA. We are working with Intel and their new Intel platform, AMX, which is supposed to be really powerful for Gen AI workloads. But from a hardware perspective, again, Nutanix is hardware agnostic, and we really believe in the power of choice. So we've got support with obviously our Nutanix NX platform, but we partner with the rest of the ecosystem. So Cisco, HPE, Dell, those are all platforms that are validated to run our GPT in a box offering. And we support a broad list of NVIDIA GPUs at the moment. So depending on the size of the models that you're working with, whether or not you're doing your own inferencing or model building, we have a variety of different GPUs that you can install to meet the correct use case, again, to reduce that over provisioning and waste of potentially having more than you need.
And one thing it's interesting I didn't hear you mention was storage.
Yeah.
How does Nutanix provide storage for this important high demand workload?
Yeah, super great question. Nutanix early on had a Kubernetes platform. It's now, known as NKP, Nutanix Kubernetes platform. But what we have underneath that is Nutanix Data Services for Kubernetes. So Nutanix Data Services for Kubernetes is a container storage interface, CSI, that provides the storage attachment for Kubernetes containers. But the beauty of that is it's built into our platform in our storage stack. So you still have all of the same benefits like multi-cloud snapshot technology, backup, replication, those types of things. So we're not strapping an additional software layer on there. We don't have extra pieces. It's all part of that NCI, that Nutanix core infrastructure, and our Nutanix unified storage platform. We're leveraging all those investments that we've been making over the last 10 years to bring that same level of support and resiliency to Kubernetes, and therefore, Gen AI and GPT, that type of stuff.
And is that bundled into, how is that bundled into Nutanix at large in terms of licensing? Is that something completely different, or, how does that work for you guys?
No, I would say the overwhelming number of Nutanix deployments that we sell have the correct licensing in place to run Kubernetes workloads. And I think we've done that because it's in our thoughts that not too far into the future here, maybe just a couple of years, that a vast number of our enterprises will have incorporated both AI and Kubernetes. And so again, when you talk about Nutanix, it's any app, anywhere, any platform, your choice. So it's not just limited to virtual machines, but containers and storage workloads and all of those. So yeah, we're definitely focused far beyond just virtual machines and virtualization.
Yeah, that is very fair of Nutanix. I've been seeing a lot of things out at conferences that a lot of the AI plays and vendors, they're looking at a pricing model of charging per transaction or data set size. And it's good to see that Nutanix is taking a more agnostic approach and, including the ability to do all these things. And as you've been discussing this, it really sounds like, Nutanix has this turnkey platform, and, we've talked about security, and, I understand that, the data storage needs on these can be extreme. you know, how is Nutanix going to protect that data, if we're going to move it on site, and, is Nutanix prepared for that?
Yeah, absolutely. As we've been making a push into our unified storage platform, which is our ability to serve up both, or rather, files, object, and block storage all from the same software layer, we've been increasing the node density that we support. We've continued to support things like SSD and NVMe, high-speed storage, dense storage. In fact, in our PNP 2.0 pricing model, which is all current Nutanix pricing, we're not even charging based on the amount of flash capacity anymore as we used to. So we are simply core based now. So we encourage customers to build those nodes with all NVMe, the fastest possible storage, the densest possible storage, and there's no additional upcharge for that, right? That's just part of purchasing cores of Nutanix now. And then beyond that, obviously Nutanix was really well founded on data resiliency, right? So you have different redundancy factors. We have rack and block awareness depending on how you've deployed. We support snapshots to other Nutanix clusters, clouds. Really there's a ton of options in how you want to manage your data, but we really focus, and it's part of our heritage to focus on data performance and data safety.
Wow, that's just something, in thinking about security and resiliency, is Nutanix with their container platform able to provide resiliency for customers? Like I was just thinking about customer service chatbots. That's a communication. It can never go down.
Yep.
Can Nutanix host that on-prem and in the cloud and automate the recovery and things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Nutanix, that's our bread and butter, right? That's our core competency. So, an on-premises cluster connected to an NC2 cluster, which is a Nutanix cloud cluster. Those would operate in lockstep with resiliency plans, the ability to fail over in the event of an emergency, a disaster. But absolutely, yeah. I mean, we take that type of stuff very seriously, and yeah, we have many customers with very high requirements on uptime.
Wow. So yeah, that would make this even more turnkey than going to the cloud, especially if you're, trying to move between different hyperscalers. There definitely could run into some problems. So that would be really
Yeah,
cool.
I actually think that's a really good point that you just brought up, and something that we haven't discussed, right? There's a concept of lock-in that I'm sure you're familiar with. Lock-in being, hey, I'm using a cloud provided model. Maybe it's Azure Machine Learning, maybe it's ChatGPT. But my data becomes sort of beholden to that model and that product. And so to your point, right? Let's say I'm a Microsoft customer, I'm all in on Azure Machine Learning, and then something changes, and now we're looking at Google. We want to use the Google's, their cloud inferencing APIs. My data sets, my data structures, the work that I've done may not be compatible immediately with that, right? Because we're not using open source tool sets, we're not using standardized tool sets like NIM, but rather we're using a vendor specific. So one of the other pieces of Nutanix is we're really of trying to help you avoid lock-in, and avoiding so if you wanted to make a change and you say, hey, I want to switch the model that I'm using, or I want to flip from open source to NIM, I have the ability to do all of that on the fly, and I'm using all open source tooling.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just hearing there's a whole lot of choice here. There's so much that, to consider here. And it's great to hear that, Nutanix is a place that, like we started the conversation, where, you could deploy this with your 3 nodes, get started here. And like you said, grow this out, try it out, get it running, figure out what your load is, and then, scale it as needed without painting yourself into a corner. This really sounds like a great, resilient, AI ready platform. I'm looking forward to working with you more on this.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to taking this to market further. We've got an entire team of AI specialists, and they're out there to talk with partners, customers, and really help sort of just share our vision on how we think this looks, and just get it out there and talk. But yeah, I mean, our goal is really to build a resilient AI ready platform. And I think we've done that with GPT 2.0. And I'm really excited to see what customers do with that.
And I think that's one of the hardest things about AI. There was a law of computer science that I learned way back in college: was whatever is easy for machines is hard for humans. Whatever is hard for humans is easy for machines. And so when we jump into AI, it's great to hear Nutanix is ready to have these conversations, because I think there's, especially with the high failure rate of AI projects as a whole throughout the industry, of having that sounding board of, being, to work, meet with the organization, look at your business case, and figure out how can we ask a question that AI can answer? How can we, you know, build a solution around this that, we can get started with, because, we all learn through failure, and this is a very fast paced thing. And so I'd be curious, what kind of, use cases is Nutanix seeing, and, you know, what has been the experience so far working through these kind of problems?
Yeah, I mean, from a use cases perspective, right? It's really about just sort of analyzing, operating, and modernizing data, right? So the first step is to analyze your data, right? What do you have all this data, you've created all this data. What is it? What is in the data? Is it useful data? And then from there, I think you can sort of operate that data, operate your business with that data, right? So now that you've analyzed that data, you can operate it and you can say, hey, I want my business to run off of this data. Now I want to intelligently process documents and data and give me answers and things that help me then make my business better. And I think the last piece of it is really just about modernizing your business, right? And this is sort of goes hand in hand with GPT. I don't think it's necessarily the same, but organizations, I think even to take it back a step from AI, I think they're struggling with even just containerization. I think containerization is a really tricky technology, and I think the adoption there is definitely ticking up, but there are definitely some people I see them post on different blogs, LinkedIn, that Kubernetes doesn't always save people time, and they're not always making themselves more efficient with it. And so I think if we can change the mindset on things like Kubernetes and say, hey, you don't have to do it all yourself, right? There is an enterprise platform that supports Kubernetes, our Nutanix NKP, and we have that data platform underneath it, and we have all of those things that require teams to build for you. So if you could just modernize your business by containerizing, and then that gets your business cloud ready, right? Because we've all seen it, you and I have seen it, to take your current workload infrastructure and move it to the cloud, very costly. It's not the right way to do it. But if you could modernize that workload, make it containerized, use microservices, then if you needed to move that workload to the cloud, you can do it natively, and you're not just lifting a VM and shifting it up to the cloud. So I think in all, this entire thing helps organizations be more modern, and GPT may just be the catalyst that drives them, forces them to make that modernization push.
100%. I lead a team of architects, and I've told my guys, hey, now with AI, containerization is no longer optional. This
Yeah.
is something that we have to embrace. And one thing I've been surprised customers don't know is, you can actually break up your existing legacy applications that run on VMs and convert them to services that run inside containers.
Yeah.
And there are professionals who can help you do that. Now not everything's going to fit perfectly, but there is a substantial amount that you can move in there. And along with AI, it's something that I know we've all been comfortable with virtualization. I've been doing it since 2005, but when I talk to customers, you need to start thinking about data locality. What are you going to run in the cloud? When are you going to run on-prem? And to your point, what's going to be a container? What's going to be a microservice? What's going to be a VM? And then also, where does SaaS fit into your play, and how are you going to integrate that, and security? And so it's a very large conversation. But circling back to GPT in a box is, if you can have all of these components in one platform that you can scale in a linear fashion, it makes your life a lot easier. And then you were saying earlier is, if you're running NC2, you can move these things back and forth, and it gives you a way to ease yourself into this.
Yep.
And even with microservices, you might be thinking, oh, that's cloud only. Actually, I have clients who they run containers to run the basis of their microservices, and they run their microservices as extensions of their container environment. And so you can set up something that's very similar to what you might run in a hyperscaler inside your inside your own GPT in a box, and then
Yeah.
be able to scale that back and forth through NC2. So don't think of this as, because some people do say, oh, containers, they're already being passed by microservices. Like, well, no, you still can do a lot with them in conjunction with each other. And I think the real challenge, though, is I think one of the big issues out there with the Broadcom acquisition is customers looking at going, oh, well, yeah, maybe I do want to containerize or move to the cloud or go to microservices, but then they look at their applications and they find out, oh, my application's only certified to run on VMware.
Yeah.
And so this move is going to be something where you're going to have to ease yourself into it and test things out. I mean, way back in the early 2000s when I was doing virtualization, I would hide the VMware icon and then pull the vendor on the call and say, hey, does this work? And they're like, oh yeah, this one's great. And then they're like, oh my God, it's virtualized.
I remember those days. It was unthought of to have virtualized hardware, and to have a virtualized operating system, and yeah, vendor support was tricky. To your Broadcom comment, right? I think a differentiator on the Nutanix side, as far as our Kubernetes platform is, we're really based on vanilla Kubernetes, right? So again, no lock-in. VMware has a containerized platform, or I should say Broadcom at this point, Tanzu.
Yep.
But it's got some proprietary components to it, right? And so that makes it challenging, and you're locked in, right? You have some proprietary components that make it difficult to sort of portabilize some of those things. Namely, their kernel is still challenging to work with sometimes from a security perspective or observability. So definitely, the fact that we're leveraging vanilla Kubernetes and have that portability, again, just further emphasizes our stance on choice and no lock-in, and really just, we want you to be successful, and we want you to be successful, hopefully by using our software platform. But we're going to make that as easy as we can for you.
Yeah, and you've mentioned the open Kubernetes platform that you guys are in, and I'm assuming that you've got published APIs, and you're ready for integration with these partners that you're offering choice through.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We could have a whole second podcast and go really sort of deep and gritty on Kubernetes, and it would probably take us 4.5 hours just to sort of get through the first layer. But yeah, absolutely. It's really well ingrained in our product. It's all of our vendors that we work with, all of our OEMs, we're really tightly integrated with what they're doing and making sure that everything is successful. So yeah, we really pride ourselves on that. And yeah, we definitely feel like Kubernetes containerization is a path towards the future. So we continue to innovate there.
And one thing that I really genuinely appreciate about Nutanix, having worked in the startup space like you have, is if you haven't, as a or as someone who's new to Nutanix, go Google Nutanix Bible. Nutanix publishes all of their documentation. GPT in a box, even as new as it is, it exists in the Bible. And I am so impressed where, having worked in the startup community, there's a lot of faking it till you make it.
Yep.
But Nutanix publishing everything, it's right there. Nutanix doesn't hide things. And so, and if you have questions, I've always had great success talking to people like Matt, and getting help. And so, if you want more details, besides reaching out to Matt, you definitely can just Google the Nutanix Bible or GPT in a box Nutanix Bible, and you'll see all of the, the in-depth, detailed information you're going to need to fully understand this.
Yeah, and to even go a step beyond the Bible, right? And the Bible is a fantastic resource, and we're truly blessed that we have that. To go a step beyond that, we actually have published a technical paper on our GPT in a Box 1.0 release, and it's several hundred pages long, and it walks you through the entire solution and exactly how we built it. So there's no secrets, there's no gatekeeping. It shows you every single command, every version of every piece of product that goes on there, every open source component. So if you have the hardware in your lab, you could build our GPT in a Box 1.0 with that validated design that we've published and made available.
Wow. Yeah, that's excellent. And yes, it sounds like this is, Nutanix is giving you just all this choice. They're here to support you. I'm really impressed. I'm looking forward to working with you a lot more on this. Are there any new Nutanix promotions to help customers get started, whether in C2 or on-prem?
Yeah, I mean, we're always running different promotions. So I urge everyone who has interest to reach out to your account executive at E360 and take a look. And we're definitely offering promotions all the time, though, for different configurations and spaces.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, and we're definitely here Matt and I are here for the bigger conversations, whether you want to talk business cases or how this fits into your infrastructure as it is. It's all there. And especially as you get diving into the documentation from Nutanix, questions are bound to come up with, well, how does this fit into my network? Or, what else can I use this for? For me, as I've worked with Nutanix over the years, I've always been continually impressed, like, Matt mentioned, that the storage can do file, block, and block an object. I mean, that's how many places can do that. And, besides the, resiliency through that, Nutanix, even I've read, has backup capabilities as well.
Yeah, we have inbuilt backup capabilities and replication capabilities, but we also work with industry, our industry partners to extend that support as well. So wherever our initial support drops off, we have industry vendors that help pick up after that. So there's a ton of platforms out there that we very closely integrate with.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time with me today and, covering what a great solution GPT in a box is and how much, we're looking forward to helping any organization jumpstart, with a turnkey AI ready resilient data platform. Is there any closing advice you'd have for customers?
No, I would advise customers, prospects, people interested, just genuinely take a look at the field of solutions out there. And I think after looking at the various options, you'll probably come to the same conclusion, which is that Nutanix is the best platform for enterprise AI and modern apps. It's scalable, it's secure, it's cost effective. The data services are built in. I think once you look at it, you won't look back. And I would say that our NPS score represents that very well, right? NPS score being a score relative of how customers value your product. It ranges from -100 to +100, and ours hovers in the 95-ish% range for the last 8 or 9 years. So customers who come to Nutanix love Nutanix. And so I urge you, if you're looking at modern apps, enterprise AI, absolutely please give us a look. I think we can change your outlook on the world.
Absolutely. That NPS score is so impressive. On top of the fact that you're in several Gartner Magic Quadrant leaders. And, if you go to Nutanix, you're not taking a step back or making a compromise. You are getting best of breed, cutting edge technology. And, we're here to help you. In closing, thank you again, Matt. And
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And encourage all viewers to make sure you subscribe to our Tech Session podcast. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to being on the next one.
Thanks.
Thank you.